In Cairo, we are joined by Magid Bostros, professor in political science department with the Helwan University. In Doha, Sultan Barakat, professor of public policy at the Hamad bin Khalifa University. In Beijing, Wang Jin, an associate professor with the Northwest University of China. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. What they could open the door between China and the Arab countries. Go to you, Mr. Wang, first, very briefly.
Of course, it is a very important meeting. The meeting was is the very first meeting ever since Chinese President Xi Jinping met the Arab leader at the end of 2012, and it also will witness the future development between the bilateral friendship and bilateral cooperation between Chinese and Arab states. So also we would hear President Xi Jinping, his outline for the Chinese relations with Arab states, and then we will have the very positive prospect over the bilateral relations in the future. So that is why it's a very important meeting, and also to winning the attention, as you mentioned, from all across the world.
Professor Bostros, what is the expectation from your side?
My expectation is a mounting leverage of the Chinese leadership in leading the global South into a more independent role and mounting role in the global politics and global economics. Now, look at what's happening now. What's happening after BRICS plus? We are having a GDP of BRICS members that is mounting 32% of global GDP, while the G7 is only 29.9. So we are in an interregnum decade of transition to balance the hegemonic global order. I also believe that there will be a mounting active role in politics and leverage of the Chinese leadership in the crisis and problems of the Middle East. They are calling for an international conference to resolve the Palestinian issue that have been there for more than 75 years.
Okay.
So I am very optimistic about what's going on and what's going to happen.
All right. Go to you, Professor Barakat. From your perspective, what can be the meaning of this forum?
I obviously agree with Dr. Bostros that this is a very important event and could be a turning point, not only in the relationship between China and the Arab states, but also globally, and particularly in terms of the awakening, if we may call it, of the global South. Particularly then also after the Gaza events, that's the questioning of the whole law-based order that is now taking place globally. But I am less optimistic in general, because I think there are a number of fundamental structural issues that China needs to address, and mostly China, not the Arab states, in order for them to really have a beneficial relationship with the Arab states and an effective relationship. The first and most important, I think, China, we talk about China as one unit, while the Arab world is many units. There is no unified position within the Arab states. And there's a huge difference between the rich and the ones that have interdependent economic relationship with China, be it on energy, imports, and so on, and the poor and the fragile and the desperate parts of the Arab world. So I think the first step is to create the platform, the position where we can somehow balance those positions, and China needs to talk to all those corners, bilaterally first and maybe collectively.
I see. Mr. Wang, first of all, is it necessary? Secondly, how to make sure that the relationship will not be limited to transactional between China and Arab countries? As our two Arab analysts beautifully illustrated, the so-called Arab states are very different one from another. So how is China looking at the diversity while at the same time focusing on some of the strategic long-term perspectives?
Yes, of course. There were a lot of diversities inside Arab states. For example, as our Arab colleagues, they mentioned that some Arab states maybe are very rich, like the Gulf Arabs. But maybe some Arab states, they face other economics and social problems and have a lot of pressure at home. So actually, the diversities inside Arab states, 22 Arab partners with China are very apparent. And so that is why it's a very major obstacle. But I think on the one hand, we have to know, yes, the Chinese-Arab relations could go back to maybe 1,000 years ago, and the very forum or the very mechanism between China and Arab states, both bilateral and multilateral, has already existed for 2 decades or maybe longer. But the problem is that actually we are at still very beginning of the stage between the two sides. China has, for example, has a long history with Egypt, but we look at from the very longer history, it's just a very small time. So that means that more opportunities and more times that are waiting for us to further explore. And then on the other hand, we are actually trying to cultivate, we are actually trying to create a kind of the atmosphere under which that China and Arab states, we could exchange more in the future. Because traditionally, yes, we are right that more about energy and more about the products exchange and more about the economy. That's of course, but this should be the very beginning. Because without the economy and without energy, then it's very difficult to further explore other opportunities. So under this kind of the very reliable and fundamental cooperation areas, maybe further opportunities could have been explored. So, for example, that I think 4 or 5 years ago, our Chinese President Xi Jinping has already stressed that the very outlook or the structure of the future between China and Arabs relations, 1 + 2 + 3, means, yeah, of course, the energy could continue to be the very important foundation. But then for the future, maybe space technology, maybe the nuclear technology, or maybe the infrastructure, maybe the financial cooperation, and also people-to-people exchange, all these areas could be further enhanced and strengthened, and also more opportunities could be explored.
Decision makers are making their minds on a transactional basis and also very short term. But of course, that's not likely to plant the seeds for real relationship to flourish in the future. So to you, what are the aspirations for the Arab countries that are coming to the China-Arab States Cooperation Forum? Of course, they're different, but your analysis.
What's the mega vision of China in the last 20, 25 years? It is primacy of economics, because the realization of mutual interests in the grassroots is very effective and viable in international relations. From there, we can move into political leverage and how China could be dominant and influential in the global stage. So let's look at what happened in the last 20 and 25 years. 25 years ago, China launched the China-African Cooperation Council. That reflects the mega vision of China. Nowadays, in this stage, as I mentioned, it's an interregnum decade. Now they are moving into political leverage because they have already realized the economic influence in the global stage. Now, let's go back to your question. How can China move from that starting point into the future? Now, politics and economics are inseparable, are intersected in all aspects. So we cannot segregate the economic influence from the political influence.
We see China has been playing a key role in smoothing up the interactions between Saudi Arabia and Iran. That was quite a news-breaking moment, in fact, years ago. And meanwhile, China has been trying to support negotiations and discussions among key stakeholders related to the Gaza Strip from the Palestinian side as well. So, but China's foreign policy is very clear. Independent foreign policy for peace. That has been the principle and will be the principle. So how do you see the Arab countries can better understand what China says and means, while at the same time be able to take advantage of the opportunities being created?
Yes. I think a lot of the expectations that we've referred to are built on the fact that we look at China as one of the great powers of the world. It occupies one of the 5 permanent seats in the United Nations Security Council, and that builds our expectations as to what China can do. We believe in general that it has a better understanding of us a little bit and maybe a closer relationship than maybe some of the other superpowers. But I don't think we see China coming forward to meet that level of expectations. It's true that within the council, the veto is quite often on the side of the Arab states, particularly on the Palestinian cause and so on. But those recent initiatives to build relationship between Iran and Saudi, to smooth the relationship between Hamas and Fatah, these are, I think, fantastic areas that China should be less shy about. They're not intervention. This is intervention for making peace, and it fits very well the overall vision that you refer to. But somehow the West has made us all believe that this is a Western domain only. Only the West can play a mediator role. Only the West has institutes to build peace. In fact, in the whole Arab world, we don't have a single institute that hosts mediation and can build peace. And there is not one that has come out even from China. All these institutes are Western-based, and they get used by the United Nations repeatedly. We, I think, ideally would like China to come to balance that global picture and also to offer avenues that no one else can do. And I know that on Afghanistan, I think they can make a huge progress, and their word would be listened to much more than others. On the Middle East conflict as well, on Iran, Saudi Arabia, even on Gulf relationships, if China were to step forward, I think they will receive a lot of welcome.
But I think that from Chinese understandings, first of all, that as China's leadership has already stressed for many times on many occasions, that the Middle Eastern, so-called Middle Eastern vacuum should not exist, because the Middle Eastern countries are the places that are owned by themselves. And the Middle Eastern countries should realize and be aware of the fact that they are the owners of their own lands. So that is why China is, on the one hand, willing to offer help and offer assistance to the regional countries to facilitate the maybe more possible achievements in the future, just like what happened last year between Saudi and Iran. But then on the other hand, I think that maybe the awareness of independence, awareness of real diversified should be respected and should be maintained. So that is why I think in the future, maybe the global new thinking, the global security initiative, global cultural initiative, and civilizational initiative should be further be encouraged to facilitate this trend to be realized as early as possible.
What exactly could be the nature of relationship between China and the Arab countries when it comes to trade and economic ties?
Well, to me, I would say it's not the problem of trade. The pending dilemma is not trade and economics. The pending problem is the global financial governance order. The post-World War II financial institutions the World Bank and the IMF controls trade and economics of the developing countries. And that in turn would hamper the sustainable development of those countries. Now, what happened and what's the major step forward by China is establishing a substitute system for the global financial institutions, the existing ones, including the interbank cooperation mechanism to replace the SWIFT system, establishing the new development bank to finance investments and development, the Asian infrastructure investment banks. We are talking about more than $100 billion of funds to developing countries.
So I think I want to thank the three of you for being very frank, direct. That's the spirit of any conversation in order to have certain kinds of results. Thank you so much for being with us. Magid Boutros, Sultan Barakat, and Wang Jin. Gentlemen, appreciate it.